A new Samuel L. Jackson show exploring the history of the transatlantic slave trade is currently in production.
And our adventurer, Kinga Phillips, was actually part of the dive team on that production.
Wow.
And she is here to talk about it as much as you can.
As much
Hi,
as I
Kinga.
can.
Hi. Hi. So this whole concept is fascinating to me.
Is.
And I bet when Samuel L. Jackson, came around and said, this is the thing I'm shooting, you were like, yes, I'm in, right?
Well, when they brought the project to me and invited me to be part of the dive team, I mean, I there was a little cloud of smoke behind me as I went running towards it and said, yes, absolutely.
What did it entail?
So the project is a 6-part documentary series that's going to air on Epix, and it's looking at the transatlantic slave trade through the lens of shipwrecks. So we have actually gone out all over the world, from Africa to North America to South America to Europe, and we've been diving on all these different wrecks to tell the story of the individual ships and the people who were on them.
I would be afraid to see what I was going to see. Because, a lot of these ships went down with a lot of people on board. Tell me what you saw.
Yeah, so there, it's interesting because we've seen everything from anchors and cannons and cannonballs to the remains of rigging and ships. A lot of these ships during this time period were wooden. So at that point, they're falling apart under the water, and there's really not much left. But in researching the stories, and we have historians and marine archaeologists, and we have, ROVs and boats and tech divers to go down to 300 plus feet, the things that you're finding and the things that you're seeing and the stories that you're telling are honestly heart-dropping sometimes.
I bet.
Because you're telling the stories
Man's
of
inhumanity to man.
man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I bet too it was very eye-opening for you, as it would be for me as well. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. I'm sure in all of your diving experience, you've seen shipwrecks before underwater, but this is a different level.
It's a totally different level, and you're right, because not only are you looking at a shipwreck and what remains of this, but what remains of a story and what happened. And these are not pretty stories. We're not out there telling happy, happy, joy, joy stories, but they're stories that need to be told, because as we know, history tends to repeat itself if it is not kept in the current space. And I think this is an incredibly important way of presenting it, because it's also got a lot of adventure and excitement and the diving, and are they going to get there? Are they not? I mean, we were encountering massive waves and storms and murky water and jungles and snakes, and you name it, we ran across it. So there's a bit of Indiana Jones in this, and there's a lot of science, and there's fascinating history.
Think about all the modern equipment we have today. We have weather data, we have satellites, we have steel ships, we have submarines, we have all this stuff. And still, it's not easy to traverse those waters. Imagine doing them in those tiny wooden ships coming across the Atlantic.
All those years ago.
That had to be something when you're thinking about it in your head, and you've read the stories, we've all read the stories in school, but then to bring it back to life, had to be awe-inspiring.
Absolutely, and like you said, it brings it all to life. So you have this transatlantic slave trade, the voyage across the Atlantic is harrowing in itself, and then of course you have the stories of people who were torn from their families, brought to a new land, thrown together. A lot of these people didn't even speak the same language, and all of a sudden here they are, somebody's property, working for somebody else, not being able to communicate with anyone, not being able to communicate with each other. When you really get into the personal stories there, your heart sinks.
I want to know what it was like for you as you go down. What does the tech look like? What kind of cool equipment did you guys have? I'm sure there was all of that stuff, because in my brain I'm seeing the dive from the Titanic, in the movie, how they have the extra vehicle down there. That's what I'm seeing in my head.
Well, we had one of those. We had an ROV, so we had a remotely operated vehicle that goes down to places that divers can't. We had research vessels. We had some of the best tech divers in the world. These are
What's
guys.
a tech diver for someone that doesn't know?
Okay, so there's diving like what I do, which is recreational diving. So I can go down to say 150, 175 feet. And then you have tech divers who work on mixed gases, who have rebreathers, because oxygen becomes toxic at a certain depth. So they have to go down on a mix of 3 different gases. And these guys are going down to, they can go down to, some of them have been down to 500 plus feet. For us, I think that one of the deepest dives they did was about 350 feet to look at.
Are those tanks, or are they connected to the ship?
They're tanks.
They are
they're
tanks.
on tanks. They're
Wow.
rebreathers. So
man.
it's recirculating the air and filtering it through. But then when they have to surface, so when you go scuba diving, I know you've done it, Carlos.
Yes, I have.
And you have to surface very slowly because of the bends, the danger of the bends. Now, if you go down, you have a deco time. So the amount of time that you can spend on the bottom, and according to that is how long it takes you to go back to the surface. Some of these dives, it would take them over 2 hours to return to the surface because they have to stop at intervals to be able to let their body off gas.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It's super fascinating.
Okay, so when are we going to be able to see the show? Do you know?
I do. So it's going to be in spring of 2020, and it's going to be out on Epix. And we have Sam Jackson, who is our host, who is an executive producer, who is voicing it over, and he's actually involved in the story. He came out with us a couple times.
That's a great
Isn't
idea.
that
Great
cool?
idea for a story.
Wow.
Can't wait to see all of that.
I know,
Yeah.
fascinating.
All right. See you in action.
Thank you, Kinga.
Thanks, Kinga.
Thank you.